This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's see. Do you want me to go through that next slide for you, Margaret?
Sure. I just want to make sure that everything's clear.
Okay, so we are getting started here, and we are using GoToMeeting. The meeting is being recorded this morning. Please keep in mind that if you have, if you're using two different devices, please have just one using the sound, because there will be feedback on that. I'm not sure what else you need me to say on this, how to use GoToMeeting, Margaret.
I think the information on the screen is self-explanatory, but if everybody who is on the call could go to the chat box and just sign in. I'm not 100% how many people will be attending today, but we want to make sure that we can account for everybody who does attend and provide input. So if you could go to the chat box now and just sign in your name. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you are using two devices, there will be feedback, so please just use one device. Sometimes there's a lag with the PowerPoint, so if we start talking about something else, just be patient. We'll get to that next slide. We do ask that you introduce yourself every time you speak, just so that we can make sure that we are logging everything correctly and we know who is speaking and from which entity. We appreciate that. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat box. Although I do have to be reminded so far to go back and look at the chat box. I do try to get to those questions and try to answer those as well. So with that, if you'll go to the next slide, please, Margaret, I would appreciate it. Okay, so welcome and thank you for participating in the Florida Broadband Workshop today. These workshops are being hosted by the Department of Economic Opportunity in partnership with the Florida Regional Planning Councils. My name is Katie Smith, and I am the Director for the Office of Community Partnerships and the Florida Office of Broadband at the Department of Economic Opportunity. I'll be your host today, along with my colleague, Sean Lewis, who is a Community Program Manager with the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. I want to thank our partners and friends at the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council for facilitating our workshop today and assisting DEO with invitations, technical assistance during these workshops, and collecting information and comments that will be included in our strategic plan for broadband. These comments are important for expanding broadband internet access in your region. And again, I'm Smith, and I have been with DEO for the last 6 years. I've worked in business development with large companies relocating and expanding to Florida, as well as economic development, assisting small and rural communities. I began working to establish the Office of Broadband a little less than a year ago. And today we're going to begin the conversation on broadband, focusing on accessibility, what the current status of broadband internet is in your region or your industry sector, and how you define broadband expansion. You were identified as a leader for your industry, so we really value your comments and we really want to hear from you. Next slide, please. During the 2020 legislative session, House Bill 969 established the Office of Broadband at DEO to increase the availability and effectiveness of broadband internet throughout the state, especially in small and rural communities. The bill also authorized DEO to access federal grant dollars and assist communities with expansion of broadband services. And the office is currently being staffed using existing resources in the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. And the Office of Broadband has been very fortunate to have the support and commitment of fantastic partners such as the Florida Regional Councils Association, the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television, state agencies such as the Department of Transportation, the Department of Education, and the Department of Health, and many, many others. Next slide, please. So our directives per the statute, which is specifically defined in section 364.0135, or I'm sorry, 0315, Florida statutes, we've been provided 4 main directives, and these include creating a strategic plan, building and facilitating local technology planning teams, which is what these workshops are, encouraging public use of internet through broadband programs, and monitoring, participating in, and providing input into FCC proceedings. It always tongue ties me. Next slide, please. So to meet the directives of the statute, the DEO created and adopted a 3-phased approach. And phase 1 is a feasibility study. And to specify, that will help us specify the nature of the connectivity gap. And in 2020, we submitted an application to the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration with a request for $3 million to fund this study. However, we were notified in the fall of 2020 that we were not going to be awarded the funding. However, from the help of our partners, and the office has requested broadband studies, plans, and different projects that are being completed countywide, regionally, or even at the community level, which helps identify the current status of broadband for the strategic plan. The second step, or the second phase of this approach, is the strategic plan itself. And we have begun outlining that plan. We are looking at aggregating all of the information that we accumulate in these workshops to collect and enter into the strategic plan for broadband. And the technology planning teams gathered in the workshops over the next few weeks, well, actually this week and next, are from 13 different industry sectors, and you guys will provide vital information for our conversation and the partnerships for expanding accessibility. The third phase of this approach is the implementation phase, and that's where we implement that strategic plan and we look for other resources to assist us and other partnerships as well. Next slide, please. The Office of Broadband created a website at floridajobs.org/broadband. This website houses information on federal funding, state funding, and other broadband opportunities. We regularly update the site, and we include information about the workshops, and very soon we will have a survey link located on the website for public input. Expansion. One recent development that you may have heard about is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, Ardoff. It's a program from the FCC. It was $191 million was awarded to Florida entities, and the FCC has provided a summary of the auction by county and the bidders within those counties. You can on our website for more information. It's important to note that DEO does not have a role in determining who gets what or how the funds are to be utilized. Next slide, please. To prepare for possible grant funding in the future, DEO has been directed in statute to focus on specific priorities. We have priorities for those grants. And so if we get funding, some of those, the priority will go to projects that are proposing to remove barriers of entry for underserved areas, encouraging local investments and regional investments, and addressing many of the needs that have been exposed during the pandemic, such as remote working, distance learning, and telemedicine. We hear about those a lot, but I'm pretty sure there's other entities that are probably impacted as well. And finally, the office is continuously monitoring broadband development activity and participates in the national association discussions on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. So you'll also find on our website a link to a broadband map. And the map highlights internet speeds by census block. The state of Florida minimum internet download speeds map is a long name, and it does use FCC data, and it does use it by census block. And since January 2015, the FCC has defined broadband internet speeds greater than 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload. What we did with this particular map and the data that the FCC provided in these census blocks is we chose to present the data a little bit differently. And our goal right now is to focus on what those underserved and unserved areas are. And to do that, our map highlights and shows us, even if there is one person in that census block with less than 25.3 internet speed, they will show up as either underserved or unserved, which is a little bit different. Now, I know that the FCC is working to update their data and update their information. Obviously, with the new census counts, we will have more information coming to us in the very near future. But I think this provides a really good, focus on where the underserved and unserved areas are. So it's important to note that this is for fixed internet service only. Satellite and mobile data is not included, and that we genuinely want your feedback, and please log on and take a look at your region or your county, even down to your street. You can really get some interesting information from that map. Next slide, please. So today we're going to focus on this broadband workshop, and this is the 4th workshop that is being conducted in partnership with the Florida Regional Councils Association. The 10 regional workshops are hosted by DE, facilitated by each regional planning council, and they have to be completed by February the 12th. All of the workshop participants have been invited due to being an industry sector leader in your area or your region. And we asked you to participate because we want your feedback. We want to hear what you have to say about broadband and how it's affecting you and your industry. So you can see the list here on this slide that shows the different industry sectors that were invited to our workshop today. And all of the information and discussion that we have will be aggregated into one formal document, and all of that will be presented to DEO by February the 15th. Next slide, please. So I'm going to flip it over to our regional planning councils from here to talk about the Poll Everywhere details.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The following questions will be asked through our interactive tool called Poll Everywhere to help DEO collect and aggregate information and testimonies from everybody participating in this workshop. So step 1, you can join the activity by website or by text message. If you're going to join by website, you can visit pollev.com/goldleaf599. That'd be the website, and it should just come up once you type in the website. Or you could text goldleaf599 to 22333, and you'd be able to participate via text message. And once you either pull it up on your web browser or by text message, you can participate in real time. If you need extra time, just let us know in the chat box, and we can give you some extra time to participate.
Okay, so just to start off with, do we have, yes, we have a sample here. Everyone can provide their preference, chocolate or vanilla. I will tell you, chocolate has been the overwhelming winner so far in every poll that we have done. All right. If everyone's working pretty well, that is great, and we'll get started on our slides. So we have 8 questions. This should not take up too much time, but we are interested in these. The first 3 are housekeeping, more or less. We want to know what is the internet sector that you are from. And that will help us identify who's here, who's participating, who's responding. But all of these questions are designed to assist us in designing the state programs that hopefully we'll get some funding for, and also to help us identify accessibility for your sector. And again, please keep in mind that we are trying to keep this at a sector level, and that the more personal residential information and public input will be gathered on our website in the very near future. We're going to leave that up for quite some time, that link. So hopefully we'll get some good feedback from everyone. This is a really diverse group today. We've got some library participation, healthcare, private business. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for participating. And thanks to our internet service providers for joining us today. I know you guys are busy. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you guys listening into these conversations for all of our workshops. The next question that we have is, which county is your place of business or organization located in? Kind of helps us gather a little bit more detail into who we're talking to and talking with today. So thank you so much. This is great information. Lots of Lee County folks today. All right. And this third housekeeping question is, are you aware of any existing local broadband studies or plans for your area? I know that in the last few, we've had some communities just didn't know of any. Some communities definitely knew of any broadband plans that were out there. All right, looks like you guys, okay, this is about the average, so that's great. Thanks so much for answering that question on broadband studies. All right, so if we're ready to get into it, the next question, I believe 3 or 4 get into the technology itself. And this is, of the following factors, which is the most important to your community regarding broadband accessibility? We've had some really interesting conversation on this. And some of it has been, well, you can't have one without the other. So this is a hard question. Some have said that it's more about overwhelmingly one factor over another. So it's interesting that this one looks pretty clear that internet speed is the most important factor for your community. Is there anyone from the community that would like to speak to this? I have heard from so many of you, and I know you have a lot to say. Nothing?
We're really interested in hearing from the sectors, education, healthcare, agriculture, commerce. Really want to know about what things might be specific to your sector that we should know about as the Office of Broadband?
Okay, so I've got Nancy Stevens here who mentions if you don't have speed, you get kicked off websites and you can't complete transactions. That's a very good point. Speed is absolutely a necessity, and I will agree with that. And I think speed is also becoming really important during those working from home and when schools are closed. Now, I don't know if your community's schools are back in the physical building. I know my child has been at school all year so far. So I know that can be real, that can hinder some families when everyone's home trying to get on. And it is, and yet in today's economy, the price is a big factor. It is a big factor. And, talking about, thank you, Linda, for mentioning that. And, price is a big deal. And that's something that we try to, we don't really have a whole lot of influence over at this point, at least speaking from the Department of Economic Opportunity, but it is a big factor. And I think we'll move into that, that price point conversation in a little bit.
Brad, do you want me to jump in here?
Sure, you can talk about that.
I'm sorry, somebody else was talking. Were you recognizing me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So one of the things about cost, and obviously when we think of rural availability, that's always an issue. But when we think about cost, one of the things that we always like to remind folks on this is both my member companies, Comcast, Charter, Spectrum, Cox, and then our friends in the telecom space as well, offer low-cost internet programs at about $15 a month for a high-speed broadband connection. Now, this is obviously where the service is available to connect to, but this is available to all households where the kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. So if cost is a factor and we're thinking about serving the education population of kids who are schooling at home where they do have access, this is an amazing program, and it's available right now, and we've been doing it for 10 years. So I always feel like I'm remiss if I fail to mention that when we're on this portion of these webinars when cost is a factor. And I'm Brad Swanson with Florida Internet and Television. Sorry.
Thank you, Brad.
Katie, this is Commissioner Burrows.
Hello, Mr. Burrows.
I think that the three components here, you got cost, speed, and reliability are all three components, whether you're doing telehealth, the people at home trying to do the children doing their homework or whatever it may be. Reliability has been an issue quite a bit. I mean, obviously we know that in rural Florida, our reliability is not that great. And then the cost factors are not, but I think all three of those kind of work together. And I see that two of them is at 32 and 40% of cost and speed, and 8% is only reliability. But I believe that if you don't have all three of them, you really don't have anything.
I think that's a great point, Commissioner Burrows. Thank you for that. And you're right. I mean, and I think that we've started to hear a little bit of that as well throughout our conversation. Yesterday, someone from the libraries pointed out that, and let me see if I can find my notes here. She mentioned that sometimes there are limited options for library patrons, and so at home, so they make the decision to reallocate some of their funds to to gas and transportation, be as it may, to go to the library to utilize that reliable and that speed that the library can offer them in their community, instead of logging on and getting maybe having their own internet service. So I have a feeling that is probably not uncommon. Is there anyone from the libraries that maybe could speak to something like that for this area, for this region? Okay, is there maybe anyone from education or from health could speak to that?
Hello, this is Guy Cicinelli. I'm with Lee County Library System, and I could talk on that a little bit. Our county has such a diverse demographics where we have a good portion of people that are in rural areas and travel a long way to get to schools. There's also a lot of more urban areas where we have a lot of families experiencing homelessness, and so broadband, if they have option or have the chance to have it, it's usually through a cell phone. And as we know, with our kids being home at schools or home from schools, and that trying to do homework or access a lot of quality learning systems and that kind of stuff via cell phone is not possible. And so I feel the availability of fixed broadband is one of the biggest challenges we have.
Okay, that's a great point. Thank you. And I want to point out that while our office has traditionally, our Office of Community Partnerships has traditionally focused on small and rural communities, the Office of Broadband understands that there are urban areas that are in the same situation. So we are looking at different parts of each community to expand broadband where it's so that it is not just in those rural areas. Looks like Jennifer at Glades Electric made a great comment here in our chat box that how they're affected in a variety of ways and how speed impacts their organization and their ability to participate in online trainings and video conferencing, communicating with members and receive information. And that's a hard thing. Yes, absolutely. Okay, and yes, I will send out the links to all of those programs that Brad had mentioned a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead and flip to the next question here, and that is what type of internet technology does your industry sector currently utilize through its service provider? And so we'll go through this one a little bit quickly, and then we'll flip over to that next one. I'm curious if there's a little bit of a difference here. And it's interesting, we had a lot of satellite users last week, or I'm sorry, yesterday, and versus here in this particular workshop. And if you aren't sure what those different technologies are, we can always, please let us know. We can always identify those for you and give you a little bit of a better decision. Looks like everybody's answered. That's excellent. So it looks like there's a pretty good fiber network here in this region. That's fantastic. Let's go to the next slide here, because with 71% having fiber, the next slide and the next polling question is, what type of technology would increase internet accessibility for those that you serve? And for this, we're looking to see if your region wants to focus more on one type of technology, or if there are multiple technologies that would be ideal for your region. And with 71% already on fiber, it looks like, or utilizing fiber, it looks like that may be something to expand on. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this and these last two questions and how it impacts your sector and for your community?
This is Warren with Lee County. I would say that in a lot of our area, it's not so much the technology per se, it's the development of the technology. We have a lot of corridors and communities that are new development that have state-of-the-art connectivity, but are older established communities with older infrastructure, have not been able to retrofit with fiber. And they have cable, most of them, but particularly some of our commercial areas don't have the access to that yet, and are waiting for the critical mass where it's worth it for the provider to actually extend service into the corridor.
Okay. And so with that, are you looking to continue with just one technology, or open to multiple types of technology, just as long as we are able to get the access?
Oh yeah, definitely open to multiple. I mean, but particularly as we have more high tech, the same situation that Glades was describing. You know, a lot of our companies are discussing that, you know, they're relying on this service, particularly in the current climate, for video conferencing, connecting to locations across the globe, actually, for important meetings and stuff, and having the continuity of service and the bandwidth to carry that on across their organization in a facility is important. So.
Excellent. Is there anyone else that that has a comment on that? Looks like Sean mentioned in the chat box here that many have a limited choice and it may be available but costly. And I think that kind of goes back to what Brad was mentioning earlier about the different programs for those individuals. Any other thoughts on this?
I think those programs are awesome. I mean, I know I've seen the flyers at our kids' school, my kids' school, for those programs for some of their classmates and stuff. There does seem to be a little bit of a donut hole effect, is once you get past the qualification for the free and reduced lunch, but you're still not making high wages, then you're making a choice between how much gas you put in your car and monthly cable or fiber, you know, whatever bill to provide the service. So it's a step, definitely a step in the right direction, and meets the most pressing needs, but there's still work to be done there, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that, yeah, there is still work to be done. I know both our members and school districts across the board have been, during COVID, granularly, if I can say that this morning, targeting individual households to step in and fully subsidize that last $15 for some of those households. So I know school districts have been partnering with our members to handle that last little bit as well. But you know, it's going to take everybody where they have availability to really connect those final families. So thank you for saying that.
All right. Is there any other thoughts on that from our industry partners?
Is that if folks don't have children and they don't qualify for free and reduced lunches, they still have very limited options. They're either trying to connect to the internet using their cellular device, which is completely inefficient, or they have one choice of DSL or cable in their area, which when we create those monopolies, it increases. And that's where I see a lot of families struggling.
Hi, Katie. This is Stacy Briggs with T-Mobile. I just wanted to mention that in addition to our low-cost education programs called Project 10 Million, we do have a low-cost option, a $15 option available to anyone on market, and that's through our Metro PCS stores, Metro by T-Mobile. Many people don't know that we purchased Metro PCS. They were a public company, and when we became a public company, so that's how long ago we've owned Metro PCS, and those are very popular products, and they use the T-Mobile network, which is now combined with Sprint, and we're upgrading in all of these rural areas as a result of our merger with Sprint. And just wanted to make everybody aware that that was at least for T-Mobile, we do have a low-cost option available to everyone.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that information. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So any other thoughts on this? Anyone from health or some of our other industries that we haven't touched on? And Tracy Worrells. So the city of Moorhaven, this is in the chat box here, and the Palmdale area and the area south of the bridge has fiber, but many of our satellite communities don't. And some of those, particularly RV parks in Ortona area, use a combination of Wi-Fi through the private provider or satellite, which is expensive. And even those with fiber are not happy with service. Yeah. So I know that there's going to be a little bit of subjectivity to that, but they have the access to it, and I think that's one of the things that's really important to focus on. And if they don't have access, then how do we make sure that they do get that? Sean, do you have any thoughts on this?
In some of our more remote areas, there are really going to be challenges to get folks the access that they need. Yesterday's call was particularly interesting. We heard from our library folks, and I think in some communities, libraries are going to become increasingly important for the kids who are doing the remote learning, even for things like telehealth appointments. So they're going to be a great variation in the combination of types of access that folks are going to have. One size fits all does not work in terms of broadband.
Agreed. All right. So and Jennifer made a comment in our chat box that even in our areas, access doesn't meet FCC benchmark speeds. I will agree with that. I know that that is definitely a struggle in all areas. I live here in Tallahassee, and my street, there are individuals on just in my census block that have less than that 25.3 speed. So it is very clear. And when you look at that map on our website, it definitely starts to hit home as to where those gaps are. Let's go to the next question here. It is, identify the greatest challenge or barrier concerning internet faced by your community or region. And I think this one, we've started to see that it seems to be rather consistent with some of the opinions on this. Lack of internet service providers or limited options. That was one that was big yesterday, whereas I believe a few days ago it was cost. So would anybody like to speak to maybe some of these challenges and maybe get a little bit more in depth for their industry sector or community?
Katie, I want to speak really quickly before folks jump in on this one. We're asking this question in terms of access. The reason I say that is in a couple of our meetings, folks have said that access needs to be a choice, but we're talking broadly access here. So each of these factors is what we're asking about in terms of access. What's the challenge? Thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Hi, this is Warren again from Lee County. I think it's tough to split those apart when you're talking about access, because in the best example we've got a commercial park where they were really requesting it, but it was a long way from the provider that could serve that area, and so nobody wanted to be the first company to pay for that it's a last mile issue for them, and I guess that's the access issue is there's no competition, but more so nobody wants to be the first one to act and pay for the pipe to come into the area, and then everybody else can tie into it. So it's a shared costs issue.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you for that, Warren. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Our quiet crew today.
Hello, this is Guy Cicinelli again. I'm looking at the minimum download speed census block map, and I'm noticing in some of my more urban areas that there is a lot of unserved regions and underserved regions. And the served with the green is definitely the minority areas in some of my urban areas where our libraries are. So that's why our libraries have been such a good support group, you know, or a institution for providing that access to information and services for people that don't have that at home.
And it's great that they are able to access that in your community. That is wonderful that they can get that. And we recognize that there are urban areas and pockets that just don't have it and have that speed. Maybe one of our internet service providers or Brad could speak to that.
Hey, Katie, this is Christy Mason with Lumen Technologies.
Hi.
Hey, CenturyLink is one of our brands. So going back to Jennifer raised a point that there are a lot of areas that don't meet the current FCC benchmark speed right now. So for a lot of, there's been a number of federal programs that have come out to help providers expand their networks. However, over the years, the speeds were at lower. They were 10.1. The new Ardoff program has changed to 25.3 as well. Let me take that back. CAF programs have had different speeds. And so as we are continuing to move forward, there are programs that are going to expand speeds higher, but in areas that are not populated a lot, we have to have a way to make that situation more economic. So we're relying on federal funds to assist. So from a provider's perspective, we need to make building out our network more economic. And the only way to do that is with federal funding. And that's one of the big issues that providers are facing right now. Sorry, I mumbled.
No, it was great. That was a great response. Thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. And hopefully, maybe those Ardoff funds will help with assisting some of those pockets and help our ISPs get that service that is needed.
Katie, if I can address the other gentleman's question about urban unserved areas, if I could, please.
Sure.
Okay. So one of the things that I typically will set a baseline when I'm in a room full of folks is just I want to kind of remind everyone that 95% of Floridians have access to high-speed broadband. Of those 95%, roughly 75 to 80 subscribe to it. So you've got a delta of about 15. But I will say our members are committed to finding out where those unserved areas are in the urban areas. But when you think about it, it's definitely the anomaly and not the rule that urban areas don't have service. So I would encourage anybody to either reach out to me and I can connect you with the local provider, at least in the cable arena, to connect with to see more about where service is, because typically it could be at the street. It just hasn't been adopted yet, or it could be very close by. So I think Florida is one of the most wired states in the nation. And especially when you get into your urban and suburban cores. So where there are those gaps, I would always recommend that advocates work with the local government affairs person of either the cable or the telecom provider that's already there. They're always looking for those opportunities to help, and especially with those new federal programs that Christy just mentioned, there may be more resources coming to further enable that.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate you offering that for them to reach out and gather a little bit more information. I appreciate that. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on this before we wrap up today? All right. Then let's get to that very last slide. This is a tough one. Would you like to opt in to future communications for our Office of Broadband? Yes, it's always a resounding yes. I hope we provide the information that you're looking for. And so I really want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, obviously, to our DEO leadership for supporting us in this and their guidance in establishing the office. I think I look forward to the future and how we can help every one of you. I appreciate the Regional Councils Association for volunteering their services. Every regional planning council, specifically the Southwest Regional Planning Council today, thank you so much. We appreciate you reaching out and helping us with invitations and identifying those leaders. We appreciate the Florida Association of Counties and the Small Counties Coalition. Brad, as always, thank you for your insight to Florida Internet and Television. And again, not last but not least, but our internet service providers, thank you so much for showing up today. And to all of them, we really appreciate you being here to listen in. And to our industry sector partners, please reach out at any time. We are here. We really want to hear from you, and we are looking to solve these issues together. And we can't do it without everybody's partnership in this. So if you have questions, please reach out. Otherwise, I will send out the link that Brad spoke about on some of these other low-income programs. And thank you so much. Everyone take care.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you, Katie.